Memphis. At Memphis.
That'll be interesting. Memphis is pretty good.
They are good. Yeah. Could be a tight game. So. All right, 9 o'clock or 7 o'clock, 1900. Meeting will come to order. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you there.
That's all right.
I don't see anything about the minutes here.
Minutes are not included in this agenda. They'll be forthcoming in the next meeting.
Okay. Everybody had a chance to look at the agenda? Chair will entertain a motion to set it.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions to the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of the agenda as indicated, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the agenda is approved. First item on the agenda is the Alberta Avenue zoning rescission. Request from a private citizen to relinquish the City of Belmont zoning designation from the parcel located at 113 Alberta Avenue in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. Citizen wants this property to be annexed by the town of Cramerton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As read into the record, this is zoning amendment 2019.04. The applicant, Robert Odell, is requesting on behalf of the property owners to modify the zoning, to actually rescind the zoning, Belmont zoning, on the subject property. Now, if we rescind the zoning designation, that will allow the opportunity for the owners to petition the town of Cramerton for annexation and subsequent zoning designation, so they can carry out their intent to subdivide the subject property. So I'll provide some additional background in just a moment. So on the screen, I have an aerial photograph of the subject property. This request comes to us from an inquiry initially in our planning department to subdivide the subject property. The subject property is in the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction area, therefore subject to the City of Belmont's zoning. The subject property is zoned rural residential. Within that zoning classification, the minimum acre size is 2 acres. Therefore, the city would not be able to authorize the subdividing of this property because the property is just over 2 acres. Here is a zoning map of the subject property. Everything in the blue is City of Belmont rural residential. The B2 and the property to the west is all the town of Cramerton zoning classification. The City of Belmont, you can see the highway commercial that's just down the street in the bright pink. So the town of Cramerton is adjacent to the subject property. So in reviewing this request, the City of Belmont has had different annexation agreements in the past with the town of Cramerton. We had one that was established in 2009 that was strictly between the City of Belmont and the town of Cramerton. And what it did is it identified the area between the City of Belmont's official boundaries and the town of Cramerton's official boundary. Any area in between was what they call a sphere of influence and could be annexed by the town of Cramerton and so forth. Well, in 2017, you may recall that we did an annexation agreement, a 3-party annexation agreement that replaced the original 2-party, but it still recognized the area between the town of Cramerton's jurisdiction and the City of Belmont. And the hard red line here is what is consistent with the previous agreement, but that is the hard boundary of where the City of Belmont agreed they would annex. And the area to the west of that is in the sphere of influence. It's in the city's ETJ, but Cramerton can annex all the way up to that red line.
So
subject property is in that area.
Okay,
Sorry.
so in that area with the red line, it's not reciprocal. They can move to get into Cramerton, but they can't move to get into Belmont.
Not based on the 2017 agreement, that is correct. Yes, it was a three-party agreement. It was initiated when Worrells River down at the Botanical Garden that made the city step back and look at the existing annexation agreement, and all three cities got together and they redrew boundaries and entered into this agreement in 2017. So it is the city's plan to, if request, you can only do an annexation based on a property owner's request. This property owner wants to be annexed into the town of Cramerton. The agreement has identified our boundary in the sphere of influence would allow that. So it's consistent. In this case, it's somewhat difficult because we have to, on any zoning case, we have to make consistency findings that it's consistent with the comprehensive land use plan as well as it's a reasonable and in the public interest finding. Well, it's a lot easier to make the finding that's a reasonable request and in the public interest because it is consistent with the adopted agreement between the three cities, and the property owner has made the request of wanting to come out of the city zoning. As far as goals, the closest consistency we can find is under intergovernmental relations, because this is an intergovernmental agreement between jurisdictions, so we are recognizing and respecting that.
And once this is done, if we agree to do this and the city council agrees to do it, the land will no longer be in our jurisdiction, so we won't have to worry about meeting any goals on that land.
That's correct, and it also, we've had a long time difficulty with the ETJ because they aren't taxpayers. They're technically in the county, but they're subject to our zoning. And so if there's a code, there are city services in the form of zoning that are being extended, and the permitting's difficult because it is technically the county, so we always have to figure out, is that a municipal code, is it a zoning code, who has responsibility, and it does get somewhat complicated.
As I understood it, it seems like if it stayed in Belmont's ETJ, it was difficult to come up with goals that could be satisfied in that case, because you couldn't really, to do what they wanted to do, you'd have to hook up sewer and water, and that was cost prohibitive.
That's correct. There's no utilities in the area.
Are there Cramerton utilities? I'm assuming if you're annexed by the town of Cramerton, you're going to get water and sewer. You can't, I would think the county, I don't know what it takes now, minimum lot size in the county for septic.
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that. When talking with the property owner, we recommended that they consult with Cramerton, and the property owner has talked with Cramerton because I spoke with the planner, and they're aware. I do not know the utility situation to service this property.
But you're saying there's no Belmont water or sewer
No,
area?
not
Okay.
in that area, no, sir. There's no CIP project plan that I'm aware
Anytime
of
soon.
to service that area.
Yeah, I remember.
And I'm sorry, Board Member Hartley, did you have a question?
Are you ready for questions?
Well, I'll wrap it up and then, yeah.
Okay.
Staff is recommending that you make a recommendation to City Council to approve this request, and of course, to make the required findings that's reasonable in the public interest, and is consistent with Goal 8 of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan.
Is this not, we were talking about that, what was the little house up here that they just finished up here on, near the entrance to Winslow, Pinstow Forest? That the gentleman couldn't get the right of way for the sewer, and we had to.
That was in the city, though.
It was, but the point was, didn't he have to put in a septic tank and a
Yes, yes.
So maybe that's what they're going to do there.
Yeah, the zoning's different, and it doesn't meet the intent. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to.
Okay, so this is, this piece of property is within Belmont's sphere of influence.
It's in the city's ETJ, yes.
Okay. And if we rescind it, and therefore the piece of property have no zoning as far as we're concerned, does that automatically put this into Cramerton's ETJ, or do they have to accept it?
Cramerton has to accept it, and my understanding is the property owner has talked with the town of Cramerton. I spoke with the planner, he's aware of it. They were waiting on word from Belmont on if we wanted to release it. So it's one of those, okay, which comes first, so.
The procedure.
Yes, the
And
procedure.
And if Cramerton decides not to do it, who has control of the property as far as zoning goes?
Then I believe it go into the unincorporated area of the county. Yeah, we would have.
Could they apply to come back to the ETJ, or would it just be in limbo?
I mean, things do happen.
Well, no, you're correct, and typically when a property is annexed, there's state law that says zoning has to be in place on a property within 60 days, so that's why we typically run an annexation and zoning concurrently, so we know it's been handled. I do not know the timeline of Cramerton. We have done this before, and you may recall the cases on, there was, I think it's called Peck Brothers. There was a business, commercial lot on Wilkinson, just down the street and in the same area where it's the same situation. They wanted to develop the property, to develop the way they wanted to. Our zoning did not work for them, therefore we did the same procedure, and the town of Cramerton did annex it. It's in operation.
It seems to me that reasonable people, and we all are that,
And
can figure this out so that the one city knows, we're going to do this, are you ready to do this? And before our city council votes to make this official, because ours is only a recommendation to them, that whoever the folks are on Cramerton's board and planning department here or city council here or somebody, say, yeah, we got this in the bag, it's all set up, and as soon as you do this, then we're going to do this, and you can shake your hands on that or sign a piece of paper, whatever you
Or
want to do.
make it contingent.
So-
Can we make it contingent?
Well, again,
that we'll release it contingent on, because you hate for, kind of where Dan's going, you'd hate for to release it.
Right.
And then somebody doesn't pick it up for whatever reason, and then it's,
Well, maybe the applicant can answer some of these questions, and then we'll have a better idea.
The applicant, and again, I did confirm with the attorney about the process.
Yeah.
And in fact, we just spoke just before the meeting, just to ensure that we are following the process and there was nothing else to be followed up on. However, that's
Yeah.
a great point, and I understand what.
Well, I take comfort in the fact that we've done this before,
Yes.
as you indicate.
Yes.
So there is a procedure in place that's been used before that could be followed again, it seems. And contingent is fine. I mean, that's kind of what I was suggesting anyway, that.
I mean, to me, it makes sense.
Yeah, it
to do
does.
that.
And make sure it doesn't hang out there in limbo, but everybody's saying on the page that, yes, we're going to do this, and yes, we agree, we'll do that. Once you do that, we'll do this, and everybody's on the same page, and you can go through.
It's,
And just for procedure purposes, so this is a conventional request to rescind zoning, so
Right.
it's not a conditional zoning, so you can't really place a condition, but your recommendation to move forward to the council
But
with
they,
the recommendation that there's some
Kind
kind
of
of
agreement.
confirmation that Cramerton's already working
Well,
on,
it's-
so you're
Right.
support.
not just go back into law professor mode, but it's like in a lot of these big contracts, everyone, or it's sort of like on TV where it's like you do the exchange, well, you give me the money, no, you give me what I want. And it's the same thing with like big contracts, and ultimately, you sort of envision simultaneous performance, but, even though that's kind of a fiction, but I think it can be done, but I understand the concern.
reasonable people can work this out.
Yeah.
I think the process needs to be reviewed. I think this should be a simple ETJ swap, and then let Cramerton deal with it afterwards. Take it from our sphere, put it into their sphere. There's no rescinding of the rezoning or anything like that. Just change the line of the.
Move the line
Well,
around.
so let's
Just
be
move the
clear.
line.
So by removing the zoning, we're taking it out of our sphere of influence, or out of our ETJ, okay? The town of Cramerton then has to annex, and it's in their official jurisdictional boundaries, which is different than ETJ or sphere of influence. It's in their city.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand, but right now, it's in our sphere, in their property line, in their town limits is there, you just add a sphere to them. I mean, to me, it's just as simple as moving it over there, and then that way it can never go into limbo. It can never become unincorporated. You said
Okay,
that?
so, yeah, I see what you're saying, and again, that's a procedure I'll have to double check with the
I was just thinking that
attorney.
the process could be much simpler
On that.
by going through this instead of taking it away, giving it over here, and that guy saying, well, maybe I'll take it, maybe I won't take it. And I'm not saying that this is the...
So wait a minute, let me be clear. So that far boundary is a city council, a three-city agreed contract that says that the town of Cramerton, that area in white on the west side of the red boundary, can only be annexed and accepted by the town of Cramerton. Okay, the city can't take it. The city of Belmont can't annex it. We can't. It's in an area where we drew that hard boundary, but it's in the city's ETJ area. So the only way to release any of those properties in the city of ETJ area is to release the zoning classification so the town of Cramerton can then annex it. And I understand your concern is about timing. So they wouldn't do something that would change a boundary and say, well, that's now our sphere of influence. No, they either annex it or it's in our city's ETJ is what's going on. So it's like a shared sphere of influence, if I'm explaining it better.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying,
Yes.
but I'm saying it's got flaws.
You're
That's all I'm
concerned
saying.
about the process.
The process,
to ensure
not
that
necessarily
it
this,
goes-
not necessarily this particular property. I'm trying to understand the process, because the same thing could happen with a larger piece of property that we know it could impact us more than it could impact Cramerton or whoever our agreement is with that bigger piece of property.
Yeah, all that area in white is for the town of Cramerton in annex, except for the area in yellow. And then there's what you don't see in the back. Here we go. So I'll pass this around. This is the associated map. So there are hard boundaries that says who has the ability to annex what. And right now, they can be in someone else's ETJ, it could be in the unincorporated area of the county, but again, you can only annex if it's a voluntary annexation. So this will remain in the city's ETJ until a property owner, like the applicant, comes forth and says, I no longer want to be in the city of Belmont's ETJ, I want to go to the town of Cramerton. So we have to release it so the town of Cramerton can start procedure to, and it's typically a 90-day procedure.
And it remains in our ETJ until that happens, or what happens during the interim? I guess that is a question.
That is a question I cannot answer.
Well, one thing you said was pretty interesting to me is that if the applicant who owns the property comes and says, I don't want to be with you anymore, I think I just heard you say, we have to do that.
Per this agreement, we've already
Per-
agreed
per something that's already-
that we'll release it.
That's right, we have to do
But it's like, which
this.
comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Okay,
I get where you're going, yeah.
but what I heard you say is, if the applicant comes and says, I don't want to be in your ETJ anymore, I'm in an area where I can, by agreement, be transferred over here and I want that to happen, then we don't get a vote on that.
So again.
Is that right?
Well, wait, there's a caveat to that. If there wasn't this agreement in place,
But there is.
but there is, yes, if there wasn't this agreement, so it doesn't apply to every piece of property
got
in the
it.
ETJ, but we
Right.
have an agreement
On this
here
piece of property.
on this piece of property.
So
So,
the process is basically one that folks have to figure. The gentleman is going to say, I want to go, and we have to let him go, is what I heard you say.
yes, it still has to go through a process, hold on, and be
Got it.
approved by city council. Now,
Right. Can they say no? I think
I don't, you know.
we have an
We've talked
agreement.
about
Without
these
being
things
against
before, I
it.
mean, I guess they could, but it would be in violation.
In violation of the
Grant
agreement.
an agreement and,
So
yeah.
ones are
I
above.
mean,
So-
this is not rocket science, folks. We got an agreement that says if the dam,
So why do you have to vote on it?
Because there's a,
part of the process.
to release the zoning, you have to go through the state law and comply with the process. It goes to the planning board, it goes to the council has to
Okay.
bless it.
All right, it's-
We use
that's
things
all right. I go over here, that's
like,
fine.
I got it.
so we use things like the agreement to help either support or yea or nay. You know, if we didn't have this agreement, we might have a difference of opinion
bingo.
on it. So,
But we don't.
anyway,
But we have the agreement. That's what I was trying to get
Yeah,
at.
we
have
Yeah,
it.
you got it.
Well, let's,
Okay.
I mean,
so.
let's hear, you want to hear from the applicant? Do you have it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mr. Odell, would you like to add anything to our discussion here? Come on up to the podium, please.
Yeah.
No, you gotta come up here. That's our rules, you gotta come up. State your name and address, please.
Robert Odell, 125 Missouri Lane, Mount Holly.
Thank you, sir.
It's my first meeting too, and that was awesome.
Glad to have
That
you.
was presented very well.
Glad to have you.
Your question was, if you give it to Cramerton, will they take it? There should be an email to Alex stating from Mr. Watkins in Cramerton that they want the property. That email should be with Alex
Okay.
to clarify that.
Okay.
And just for clarification, it still goes through their process and has to be blessed by their town council that they've accepted the annexation, but again, it's consistent.
But it's in the
They should
agreement.
be against the agreement as well if they didn't.
That's correct,
Bingo.
yes.
There.
Got it.
Now, does anybody have any?
I think, that was,
I want to ask you a question, because I have two houses on Alberta, and I assume that is going to concern the entire street there.
No.
It's not,
No, ma'am.
then I'm going to be sandwiched in between two people. If your property goes to Cramerton, then the one on the other side of Cramerton, I'm just sitting in a no man's land. All right?
Well, look at it
I
like
mean, you're
this.
going to be doing.
where's our, Yeah. Wait,
Well,
hold on a minute. Just a minute, we're losing control here. If you ladies would like to speak, we have a process
Well,
here.
that's my question.
Well,
I'm not,
you-
it's just a simple question.
okay.
That's one that I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
You could probably answer that.
So-
So, this request to rescind the zoning does not affect the adjacent properties at all. They still remain in the unincorporated area of the county. Their properties will still have the city's ETJ zoning. They will have our zoning classification, so nothing changes for them until such time they may want to be annexed by Cramerton or do something different. So, but I do understand your concern about, okay, so you're an isolated, unincorporated parcel.
Yeah, the line for Cramerton is on the rear of my property.
Right.
Can we put that map back up that shows?
so basically she's saying she's going to become an enclave or an exclave or something like
Well,
that.
you know, she brings up an interesting point because, you know, something that I've talked to Adrian about is the whole ETJ.
excuse me, if y'all would like to have that conversation outside, that's fine. Or if you'd like to speak and we didn't give you the opportunity to sign up, we'll give you the opportunity to sign up and come and speak.
Okay, excuse me, I do not mean to be rude, but I just wanted that question.
I understand, I want to give you ample opportunity to do so. So,
So what I'll try to do is address yours and have sort of this larger discussion as well. So, you know, so far since I've been with the city for about 5 years, and this is the second request in the same vicinity where someone is requesting to be annexed by the town of Cramerton. This ETJ area, you know, besides having us zone and have to do, oversee it for zoning authorization, it's all in the unincorporated area. It made sense to have ETJ areas when the state law used to allow involuntary annexation, but it really serves no purpose today. Because you can only have voluntary annexations. You know, they were originally put in place so someone could, a jurisdiction that had area in the county next to them could place some authority to try to make sure the uses would blend and so forth. And then it gave rise to involuntary annexation. So I've had conversations with Adrian on pockets like this going, do we really need to have this ETJ area? Can we not just release everything? And if we have this agreement with Cramerton, should we not just meet with Cramerton and say, okay, we have this agreement, do you want to look at this? But then again, annexations have to be voluntary, so they can't come in and just say, oh, we're going to take it, so we don't want to create a no man's land, like what your concern was, that there's some authority over it. So we're sort of here, and we do it, and although it seems piecemeal, and it is, but if a property owner comes in, we have these agreements with the neighboring jurisdictions, and the property owners wish to follow up and implement this part of the agreement.
That's it. Okay, I understand that. Ma'am, let me get your name, if I may.
I'm Angel Thomas.
Angel
Thomas.
And your address, ma'am?
103 Alberta.
Okay. And your ma'am?
I'm Edna Walker,
Edna Walker?
and I own the property at 103 and 105 Alberta Avenue.
And if I could add this for Ms. Walker. So, although the city is going through this process, the property owner will still go through a process in which you will be notified that you received a letter from us through this. When the property owner is annexing the property and placing zoning on the property, you will be notified from the town of Cramerton and be able to go to their meetings to make sure that you're comfortable with the zoning that's being placed on that property. And that's the best way to keep your voice into what's going to happen next to you. So you'll still have other opportunities to follow along the process of this adjacent property to know what's happening.
You know, my fear for them would be that it's consistent what's out there. I don't know what the size of the lots will be. It's a 2-acre plot today when they subdivide it.
It's a mix out there.
But I'm just thinking where they live. I can't tell which one.
Yeah.
If they're towards Wilkinson Boulevard or back towards,
You're towards Wilkinson Boulevard, are you not?
Yes, you know where the muffler shop is? I own the next property.
okay.
That's on Wilkinson, and I'm the next property owner on the left side going up.
So it is a mix, but I don't know when they subdivide it, you'd kind of want it to be consistent with what's there, whether it's in Belmont or Cramerton.
Right, and that would be the opportunity when
Right.
you're
Yeah.
going through the process of putting the zoning classification on that property.
So that's where they need to stay engaged with.
Yeah.
Stay engaged,
with it.
and if they're proposing
Right.
a zoning that allows multifamily, you want to say, no, that's not consistent with the
Right.
neighborhood,
Yeah.
and so forth.
Right.
So my understanding, the discussions with the town of Cramerton is subdivide for single-family detached residential homes.
Okay. So, just so that you know, ma'am, I've registered you for public comment, so you're official, okay? So, but when you go to Cramerton, they'll have the same kind of format for you to have a public comment so that you can engage and come up and speak and so on and so
Well,
forth.
this is my first.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that, so.
In my entire life.
I understand, so just so you know, we made you official so that we can have this conversation, okay? So that's how it works. Thank you for your comments and your questions, and as Shelley has said,
One who lives there.
yeah, my point is that, and Shelley made this very well, that the next step is to deal with the folks over at Cramerton, because according to the agreement that was struck, as you probably heard, we don't have a vote in this. They said there's an agreement, and the gentleman said, I want it, and we are obliged by the previous agreement to honor that agreement. Now, we've been kind of discussing how we're going to get from point A to point B, and, we can have that conversation till the cows come home, but the bottom line is it's going to happen. So as Shelley pointed out, your best bet is to make sure you get a hold of the folks over there at Kramer and make your voices known over there. Yes, ma'am. You're official. Go ahead.
Right now, we are in the community fire department district. If you have property beside of me in Cramerton, and 2 doors down, you have property in Cramerton, is Cramerton gonna be my fire department or community?
I would bet they'd both respond, but I don't know that. If I were the fire chief and there was a fire next door to a property that I was responsible for, I'd show up with my truck too, just to make sure it wasn't gonna go up
On my
awry.
street are single-family homes.
Right.
And I wanted to know if they were gonna put an apartment building on that property.
There you go.
Currently in Belmont, you can only have one home or a duplex. And that's not,
On 2 acres.
yeah, only 2 acres on a residential lot. Cramerton will allow that property to be subdivided where homes like yours can be built.
There you go. Good discussion.
What
Everybody okay?
happens, and this is not with this specific one, but it's more with the process. So if it gets released from the ETJ and they don't go apply at Cramerton, do they have to apply? Or could there be a situation where there's a benefit to someone might say, well, this is what I deal with, and I'm going to do all this stuff, and we want to do this, and I'm not saying this is you, and then turns around, gets released from it, doesn't reapply, and then they've got,
That's where Dan's coming from.
can they do then whatever they,
I can't answer that.
Whatever the county will let them do.
Whatever the county, it would go to the county then.
You know,
Zoning.
I don't have that
Yeah.
legal
Have no trust in the
background to honestly
So
answer
my
that.
problem's not this property, my
I mean-
problem's a bigger piece of
Yeah.
property, or somebody that's gathered 6 or 8 of these together, and they all ask individually to do it, and then now he's got a bigger piece to work with, and he decides, well, I don't want to go to Cramerton.
Yeah.
Because you've released me, now I can do anything I want to, as long as I can finagle the county into allowing me to do it. That's what I'm worried
Yeah, I
about. That's why I think the process is not right.
I don't
So
disagree.
we've heard, yes, there's concerns about the process and the what ifs
So-
and so forth, and that would have to be answered by
I think that-
legal.
Would it be answered by legal, and perhaps the agreement needs to be modified to specify some of
I'm
those
sure
things?
he would review the agreement
Yeah.
as part of that. And again, staff did check in with the city attorney to clarify the process. We've done this before. This is the
Yeah.
process that, not that I get to question.
Bad answer number 8 on my list of bad answers. We've always done it that way.
But this was the process that the city attorney said to follow. So we are following the direction of the city
Understand.
attorney. There's some great questions and concerns voiced about the process as a whole that I
Right.
think, we should work on to get answers for.
Well, I
So
think-
we can do 2 things. So
Yeah.
if where I'm going with this is if you're uncomfortable and want the questions answered prior to making a recommendation to council, you can always table this, ask that these certain questions be brought back and answered, and or you could make a recommendation asking the questions be answered and clarified at council. So it's really.
And I think that's not to hold up the process, but I think what has to happen, and I defer to Mr. Hartley here, is to a recommendation to the city to clarify this thing so that folks aren't in limbo. So if you get some clever words and tricky phrases that we
Well,
can...
what I would like to do is I think we need to finish this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'd like to have another session where the county or the city comes and talks to us and explains this process,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
instead of holding all these people.
Bingo.
Or get out of the EJT business altogether.
Yeah, that's the other one.
There's some merit in that, I think, because it all has changed, right?
It has changed, all the rules have changed, and we we have the most difficult time on properties that are in the county. We find that we've had to change some of our regulations because there is no way to service these properties and they want to develop, so.
That gets out of this limbo too,
Yeah,
right?
it gets us,
Event?
it helps clear.
Work myself out of a job,
yeah.
too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if that's the case, I'm not gonna go here anymore.
Yeah, I think there is that larger conversation that should be handled and, you know,
Right.
address the whole issue of the ETJ, absolutely, 100%.
Good.
All right. Can I make a motion?
Certainly, Mayor.
All right, I move to approve the rescinding of the zoning on this property, along with our recommendation that you, the planning staff, speak to the city about providing further information for future such occurrences.
Talk about the process.
Yes.
and
Yes.
The board.
Second, is there a second?
A second.
Any more discussion? Everybody okay with that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it, and that takes care of that.
I would now move that we find this decision consistent with the Belmont Comprehensive Land Use Plan and all their adopted plans and mutual agreements for the city of Belmont, because it fulfills goal number 8, intergovernmental relations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Can we just not get him to record that and we can just hit a button?
Right, we
Thanks,
can do
Mr.
that.
Adele, for different goal numbers though, right?
So clarification for
Well,
Jackie.
Neil's got me to
So,
shorten it, my used to-
making a recommendation
like you should read the whole thing.
for the decision-making, this is sort of like really right. So it will go, the same issue will go before the city council. The fourth meeting at 6:45, you will receive another notice in the mail from the city of Belmont about the public hearing, and you'll have an opportunity to speak at that meeting as well. Okay, all right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adele, appreciate it.
And again, I think she might need a raise.
That's it, yeah, I'll talk to you after. Okay.
Next item on the agenda is accessory dwelling units. Request to update and modernize the city's existing accessory dwelling and unit regulations throughout the areas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So like the chair stated, this text amendment is to update and modernize the city's existing accessory dwelling unit regulations, which are currently called rental cottages throughout our land development code. So why are we updating the current regulations for rental cottages? Currently, we cannot regulate ownership on properties or the architecture of them, kind of like how they're built. So our ordinance right now is very outdated and needs to be updated so that it is in sync and in line with the state regulations. So what's on the screen right now is our current regulations where we are regulating a minimum floor area, which we were just discussing is we can't do that anymore as well. It also says the principal building shall be owner occupied. That is something we cannot regulate by state. And then it also says rental cottages may only be constructed on the second story of a garage, studio, workshop, or similar type structure. That is something else that we cannot regulate. So we are completely modernizing and bringing this code up to date.
So it's another, oh, I'm sorry.
In compliance with state law.
Yes.
So we're in another situation where we're doing this because we have to.
We are cleaning it up.
Yes.
So the comp plan goals, and we always try to find how it works with the comprehensive plan that was adopted. So the accessory dwelling unit text amendment will allow for choice in housing, it will allow residents to age in place, and it also is another form of affordable housing. And then below you'll see the actions that are laid out in the action plan, chapter 6 for our land development, or for the comprehensive land use plan. Specific actions are permit and encourage the development of accessory dwellings in single-family neighborhoods and establish design criteria to minimize their impact on adjacent properties and neighborhood character. The outcomes of this will allow for more affordable housing, and it creates a greater opportunity for property owners to age in place. And the next action plan is to ensure that the land development code permits residential growth and development that allows residents to age in place within neighborhoods and small areas. And again, it's just allowing greater opportunity for residents to age in their home or on their own, or own their lot in an accessory structure.
Do you know if there's much demand for this at the moment?
I wouldn't say there's a lot. We've had several requests since I've been working here, but maybe less than 10. So, and again, they are doing it by right as well over garages. So this text amendment would create income opportunities for property owners, provide more affordable housing options in the area, allow residents again to remain in their home or with a possible on-site caretaker, allow families to move aging parents or children onto their property, and allow families to retain independence and gain proximity. So the proposed text amendments. Chapter 2 is our definitions chapter. This is the definition that staff has worked on creating. So we're saying accessory dwelling units are accessory to single-family detached dwelling that is either attached to or separate from the principal dwelling unit, and it's going to exclude motorized or non-motorized vehicles, cargo containers, and similar units. Chapter 3 is our general provisions chapter. The edits that we are making is where you see accessory dwelling units, see 6.2.21. Originally rental cottages was there, so we struck it out, replaced it with accessory dwelling units, and then we added an additional requirement that emphasizes that manufactured homes, tractor trailers, with or without wheels, buses, motorized and non-motorized vehicles, recreational vehicles, cargo containers, and similar objects will not be permitted as accessory structures. Chapter 5 was our big cleanup chapter, so anywhere there was rental cottages language, we took it out and put it, put accessory uses, we put accessory dwelling uses as an accessory use to single-family properties.
So I notice on page 5.5, permitted uses under lodging, you struck some words but didn't put this in there. Is that on purpose, or? Page 23 or 47.
Well, they've done it everywhere.
So accessory uses should have been added under the residential permitted uses, and rental cottages would have been taken out of the lodging.
Okay, so that was okay, I got
For
it.
each zoning area, and then we.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just
good.
make sure you take out the ands too, because there is no and. It's just been, in some of
Yes,
these,
bed and breakfast.
yeah.
Good catch, yeah, we can do that.
Also, the word only, I'll give you a few hits on where the only goes. Just a little.
Chapter 6 is our additional requirements, so this is where in the chapter, the section was reserved for rental cottages. We took out rental cottages and made it the accessory dwelling units, additional requirements. So ADUs will not be permitted in the highway corridor and business campus district zoning districts. They may only be authorized on lots with one single-family house. The use of same or similar building materials is encouraged. ADU's access door may not share the same facade frontage as the primary dwelling. One additional parking space is required, and we have included that the planning director may approve on-street parking under specific conditions, which is that the street can accommodate on-street parking. It's not otherwise prohibited by any other regulations, for example, like an HOA, and where there is no other practical alternative for on-site parking. The max square footage of the ADUs may not exceed 50% of the square footage of the principal structure or 900 square feet, whichever is less,
How do you calculate that square foot?
based on the square footage of the principal house.
No, how do you calculate that? Is that heated? Is that gross?
So typically, I go off of what's on GIS. Yeah.
Which is going to be heated. square
Well,
footage.
I already know that what's on GIS isn't
But
right
it's
for my
not
house.
right.
So, okay, 900 square feet's pretty big. It's that's a two-bedroom house.
But that would mean the
But
principal residence was
whichever's
2,000.
Less,
Correct.
so it's whichever's less. So if somebody has a 4,000 square foot house,
Right, they're going to, I'm saying
900
even
still the
with a
max.
400 square foot house, 900 square
Yeah.
feet's not a bad house in the back.
On your, yeah, go ahead.
Two bedrooms could be, and you're only requiring one additional parking space.
Per bedroom.
Is it per bedroom? No, one per unit.
That's not hard, is it?
And could this 900 square foot accessory be a duplex?
No.
Do we
That's an
prohibit it,
accessory
or do we say it's a single family structure? I mean, how do we make sure it's not a duplex? So there's two families living there and need two cars.
So you can only have a duplex as a primary structure on the property.
Okay.
So this is an accessory
It says-
dwelling unit, it is not a primary. And we don't even allow an accessory dwelling unit if you have a duplex on the property. So there you go.
Okay.
So you'll have one primary at the most and possibly one accessory.
So help me understand, so the dwelling unit, can it be one story, or can be 2 stories, right? Like
So
a
that's
garage?
actually on the next page, I do want to ask.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get clarification.
So kind of broke it down for attached ADUs and detached ADUs. Location for attached, they may be located in the side or the rear yard. Detached may be located in the rear yard only. Setbacks, if it's attached, it's going to need to meet the setback requirements of the principal structure. If it's detached, there's a 10-foot side and rear property line setback. And then if it's a corner lot, they must meet a 15-foot setback. And then height, for attached ADUs, because again, it's accessory to the principal, it cannot exceed the principal structure height. For detached ADUs, we actually started talking about it this morning. We are kind of up with 2 options. So we have the height of the detached ADU shall not exceed the maximum height of the primary dwelling unit. And then the other option was proposed detached ADUs that exceed the height of the principal dwelling unit shall obtain approval through conditional use permit. So we did want to bring that to the board for discussion.
But it can still be no more than 900 square feet.
Correct. Or 50%, whichever is less.
Right.
And what about still being built over a garage? Because that's the ones that exceed the height of the primary.
That's correct, so.
So that's
So
done
that's
now.
why there's this option before you,
Right.
if we select the option that says that if someone wants to exceed, like put it over a garage, you have a detached garage, by requiring them to obtain approval of a conditional use permit, you can look at it as a case by case. Is it, is this so
Well, the
close to the
council would look
property
at it.
line, is it gonna look over the next person's pool area or so forth? Or if it's a bigger
Not us.
property and it's not gonna impact anybody, then you have, so it gives some flexibility, but it can be examined on a case by case, and there are required findings that will need to be made.
But that's
Not by us.
At that
council's
council.
making.
But not by us.
Not by
Not by
us.
this, no.
All right, so if I build a 900 square foot unit on top of a 900 square foot garage, I have a dwelling that is as big as the one.
So
that's
that
the
was my
principal dwelling.
question, is it the garage and the living unit that makes 900 feet, or is it total? Would the garage be counted in that?
Well, that's interesting. We had this discussion because originally, one of the drafts said 900 square feet of heated area. There was some language about heated area, and I'm like, whoa, wait. So if somebody wants to do an accessory dwelling unit and provide their parking in their one spot in a garage, or do a 2-car garage with it, then that could be a 1,200 square foot
pretty big.
structure, which is really big. So our intent in this is 900 square feet total. So they were doing a garage for the parking.
That's included in it.
It's everything, it's all.
Okay, part of the 900.
If that's the intent, maybe we should make it clear.
It should be very clear, because it's not
It
clear to
could
me.
come up 5 years from now and no one will remember.
That's a great
Yeah.
point, and that would.
'Cause it's not clear
clarify
now.
that.
So if you've got a garage that's already how many square feet, that's gonna be a pretty small living area on top of it then.
Most are
If it's a
20 by
two-car-
20.
If it's a two-car garage,
So
Let's take a minute and
400,
talk about this.
the average.
So we have, but that would only come into play if it was detached, is our concern, right? If it's attached, so if you have an existing house with attached garage and. there's-
attached, are you saying?
Attached.
Attached.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Attached.
I-
California. So attached garage, and you want to put a dwelling unit up above, it's really unlikely somebody will do 900 square feet on top of a garage unless, yeah.
You don't know.
Come on.
You go.
I've seen it, to measure.
Yeah.
20 by 25.
Yes.
20 by 20.
So you got 400 below.
So, and then we have a requirement, and the reason I'm talking out loud about this, and then we have a requirement that says, okay, if you have existing parking for the primary house, you gotta maintain it. So do we nix them for keeping their parking and doing this addition on top of it?
What about the detached garage?
Yeah,
If the detached garage is already 500 square feet, then
Let me ask this, what if it's a one-story with a one-story garage, and now you're gonna let them build on top of it, so you exceeded the height of the primary
They
residence?
can't exceed the height of the primary residence if it's
Okay,
attached.
but that happens all the time, like down at
if
the
it's,
beach and
if
places.
it's attached,
Correct, and
What
we're
if it's
discussing what we
detached?
want to do for detached.
Okay,
That's-
right.
So
that
attached,
comes
you
into
couldn't-
play when it's detached, because
okay.
the primary structure,
It's a ranch,
can
and
never
it's got a
be-
garage on the end, and now I wanna build a second up above it, like make it a split floor plan. You remember
Right.
those houses?
yeah, they would be.
Yeah, I love those
able to
houses.
do it, because someone can build, right now, a primary home can be 2.5 stories.
Okay, so they could do that,
So they could do that.
okay, and it wouldn't even play into
It would
this.
play in, so that's why we didn't address height for the
Overall
primary
height.
structure, because the primary
Okay.
structure has the ability to go up 2.5 stories.
Okay.
Our concern is when you have detached
Sure.
structures towering over
Absolutely.
a one
I know we
story.
discussed
So
that.
we thought about it and said, okay, well, if you have a detached structure and they want to add a story to it, and you only have a one story, let's give them the flexibility, because in the right site, it might be just fine, won't
Sure.
impact anybody, depends where that detached structure is and so forth. But in a tight downtown area, it could.
That's exactly what I'm thinking about,
where
yeah.
yeah.
That's
Where you're
why
looking at all the one level,
But we
yeah.
wanted to give the flexibility to consider it on a case-by-case basis.
That's option two.
That's up.
But now I'm going back to the 900.
Right, it needs to be
And,
qualified.
how we measure that. So you're
Gotta be
concerned if
total
there's a
footprint.
detached garage already,
mhm.
and somebody wants to put a 900 square foot unit, that's a pretty big building. I guess
Could be as big,
already
as
have to be
the
yeah.
building that,
the primary.
yeah, could be,
Yeah.
theoretically.
But again, you know,
It'd have to be 30.
but
by
it's
30.
whichever's left.
No, it could be an 1,800 square foot house, and you have a 900 square foot garage and workshop, and they're going to put another 900 square feet on top of it. So now you got two 1,800 square foot.
That's not the way I understood it.
No,
I
I
thought the garage
was
and the.
counted in the.
Well, that's what she's trying to.
That's what we're trying to.
Right, but that
Is it?
is correct,
Right.
but then we start thinking about it, what if they're maintaining the existing parking for the primary house? Are we gonna nix them and say, okay, well, you just lost this is 400 feet down here, square feet, you're gonna lose that, and you can not have more than 500.
Right.
But that, I mean, yeah.
Or what if you just do a
Right.
900
So-
and put it up, like a beach house, so that there's just parking underneath it, and it's not enclosed at all, does that count?
But if the garage is already built, then they'd have to.
Yeah, but right, what if people
Yeah,
just start
I'm
wanting
just saying if
to
they do it that
raise
way.
it?
And then
Yeah.
he comes in and closes it in later.
Yeah.
They'd have to get a permit for that.
They won't get a permit for that.
Well, there's.
There's no reason to elevate houses yet.
Yeah, there you go. There he is.
And
Do you guys know Brian
the separation, the garage and the home have to be separated.
separated with a firewall or something?
Yes.
My apologies, I meant to introduce
Yeah.
Brian Skiba, he is with Gaston County Building Inspection.
He is the head builder.
And his son is the place kicker for Wake Forest University. Who defeated the University of North Carolina 24 to 8.
Okay, okay.
All right.
So I'm going to ask.
For the record.
So we have a concern about the I don't think it's going to be every case, but there's a rare case where we might have a very big primary dwelling, primary residence that is so big that would allow a 900 square foot, and they want to build on top of an existing detached garage or shop or something they already have, what would come into play?
So we did play this scenario out, and I could break it down. If there's a 3,000 square foot home, this does still interact with our accessory dwelling requirements, our accessory structure requirements. But let's say for this scenario, there is a 3,000 square foot home, and they're allowed 1,200 square feet of total accessory structure area for their property. Okay, that's based on 40%.
But one is a footprint and one is not.
Okay, so in this scenario, there's 1,200 square feet total that's allowed. We're going to allow, however they want to break it down, only 900 square feet to be used for an accessory dwelling unit. There are some cases where a property could use all of their allotted accessory structure square footage for an accessory dwelling unit. There are some situations where a property will be allowed to have an accessory dwelling unit and additional square footage for other accessory structures. It's going to be something we look at on a case-by-case basis, but in no situation is one accessory structure, in this case an accessory dwelling unit, going to be larger than 900 square feet, right?
But our ordinance doesn't clarify that, so.
Don't make it too
Yeah.
And I think that's.
All I'm saying is whatever we agree,
Right, it
whatever the
needs to be
intent is, we need to make it clear, because, something could come up years from now and all of us have moved on, and they're gonna say, well, what does this mean? And nobody's gonna remember.
So do you intend it to be heated square footage, the 900, or footprint?
No, we don't want footprint.
Right.
Because we've had that problem in the past where we said you can have 40% as the footprint.
Right.
And then we end up getting this two-story double thing that we don't want. So that's why we didn't use footprint, we're saying square footage. But now we need to
So
clarify.
what do you mean by the square
heated,
footage, right?
All, in no case, we could put something in there that said, no case, if it's built as a second story, shall the total square footage of both floors exceed 900 square feet in area. So it doesn't matter how they want to break it down and what is garage, shop, what is on top, the total square footage of both floors cannot exceed 900 square.
Is that what you mean?
I hate to interject, but you need to watch out with using heated square footage because there's
Right.
a lot of space in the home that could not be heated.
Right, yeah, and that's why I
Storage
don't
rooms
want
and
to
space like
use
that.
heated.
Yeah.
So we were
Because
just
they will
doing it
stay in
by
that.
I think,
floors, if we did it by floors, if you have a detached structure and they're building on top,
the total
total
square feet
footage
cannot exceed 900 square feet.
cannot exceed 900 square feet.
That's pretty straightforward. Just write that in.
Then,
got it.
or, yeah.
All right, how do we want to, let's,
But if you already had 1,200, you can't do anything.
Right, that's correct.
That's right.
Make up the money.
so if we have a
Okay.
detached
Yeah.
So then,
structure,
how so if you're building on an existing garage versus if you're building the garage and the structure just by itself, that's 900, and it's not 900 on top of an existing, is that?
Well, we would count both floors, so if they wanted to build a
Okay.
garage and a shop, whether it's one level, two levels, what we're
Yeah.
saying is. if
Just,
we-
yeah, I just said it needs to
900,
be
if
so
they get up to that,
it
or
covers
50%,
both.
whichever's less. Yes.
so does that affect deciding between option 1 and 2, or is that
No,
sort of in
that's-
addition?
the Option 1 and 2 has to do with the height.
Okay.
And whether we want to allow the flexibility of allowing someone to do a conditional use permit if they're building on top or want to go 2 stories and the primary house is only 1 story, then that gives them flexibility if they really want to go that
As long as they
path,
meet the
go
square
that.
foot requirement.
They'd still have to meet the square footage.
So
But-
I'm sensing, and it seemed like everyone was sort of thinking of option 2, is how Shelley explained it, acceptable?
That's acceptable, but there also has to be clarification that the total square foot.
Well, with the language that we.
You just described, I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely, yeah. So are we good on this portion of it?
I'm sorry, can you clarify that later?
So we've got the language we just talked about, clarifying the total square footage.
Footage, if it's detached, that both, whether it's a garage, doesn't matter what the use is.
And then option 2 on the height. Is that,
Yeah. I'm good with
Okay.
option 2. Any other questions about option 2?
Nope.
Any more of your presentation, or have you wrapped it up?
Just wanted to share office procedures. So we will require site plans with all of the zoning permit applications. Foundation surveys will also be required for attached or detached dwelling units. And zoning compliance inspections will be completed once construction is complete before they can obtain a certificate of occupancy through the county, which is how we treat all of our new single-family home projects right now.
Okay, how do you then determine the height of the accessory dwelling unit compared to the existing?
Grade? Yeah. We measure height from grade.
No.
But you're saying like upon inspection?
No, for permitting process, for the permitting process. I mean, we're not going to let it happen if the guy's, he cheats 3 feet or whatever he does,
Part of their application is they have to.
How do they prove that this structure is this high and this structure is this high?
We can require it.
Should be a requirement.
We could, if you want it to be surveyed and the elevations called out with the submittal.
How else are you going to determine
Otherwise,
it?
we take their word for it. I mean, we take the word for applicants now. I mean, we don't go measure a house after it's built and say,
You've never done anything in Billworth.
Same way with setbacks, right? I mean,
Well, we do verify setbacks now.
Setbacks are surveyed?
Through asking for foundation surveys, so we do that.
but is it the overhang of the roof?
There is some relief in the ordinance on the front and the back of the house with regard to overhang,
one more.
but not on the side. So, do we go out and measure this overhang? No, we
No,
don't.
to me, it'd be impractical for the city to go out and try to do that, or the county, right? They don't.
Yes.
Agreed.
Boy, you guys
Which is why we have the foundation
You guys
surveys.
don't know what they do in Charlotte.
Yeah.
We cut eaves off houses.
And again, we've learned as far as setbacks, that accidents happen in the field, and it's better to, it's not unusual to ask for an as-built or foundation survey to prove that they are building according to the plan. It helps, if they know we're going to do that right there, they pay a little more attention as they move forward. That would be the only option I think of as far as the height.
Okay, how do you calculate the height of the existing dwelling unit? What is the height set at?
The height is 2.5 stories.
No, what is the existing dwelling unit?
Oh, how are they going to verify?
Right.
Well,
Is it to the ridge line of the highest
Would
roof?
be the highest, the ridge line.
Not the chimney?
No,
Okay,
that has relief in the ordinance too.
okay.
Yeah.
Not a cupola?
No.
Okay.
So
Ridge line of the roof, yes, that's it.
presentation-wise, I just reiterated the comprehensive plan goals that this is in a large area. I don't want to read more, it's either in your packets.
This isn't a rezoning. This is just an administrative.
Yeah.
You still have to do
Yeah, we
it, so
still have to
you
do it.
just slide it
Okay.
back.
All right, Jim. Somebody wind up Jim and push the button.
Well, but I have a couple other, if you look at, it might be easier just because it wasn't really in the slide, but where you put accessory dwelling unit in the definitions of chapter 2, if we're doing it in alphabetical order, it needs to go there, not.
We can do that.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the only other, Neil has some, and then 3.9.3H, where you're talking about what's not allowed, like school buses and tractor trailers are not, I would say, so I would change it to have it read, some examples of structures that cannot be used as an accessory structure to residential use include, and then I'd add, but are not limited to, it will save you some trouble down the road.
Thank you.
Those are my only,
No extra charge,
yes,
as I say.
yes. All right.
So
Getting warmed up.
So the first thing we have to do
And
is,
do these can I just ask, do they have to be connected separately from the main house to the city water and sewer, or are they connected through the house?
We brought that question up with our utilities department, and it'll really be up to the resident how they choose to. If they want to have somebody else living in there metered off separately, then they'll pay the meter tap fees.
They wouldn't have to,
They
but-
wouldn't, no, we're not going to regulate
Okay.
how they do their utilities.
And these square footages would accommodate, these minimums that we're talking about, the system, I guess, could accommodate it. The lines that are already there. I'm thinking about my 1960s house. If I go put a house out back and I connect it to the same old lines that my house are connected to, we're probably going to create a problem.
Yeah, our utilities department, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Okay.
approval of the text amendment, staff recommends to the city council. Chair will entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve, subject to the edits you and I submitted, subject to the language that we discussed regarding clarifying the total square footage of the accessory structure, and then subject to option 2 in the presentation regarding the height of the accessory dwelling unit.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I move that we find this a reasonable request in the public interest and consistent with the comprehensive land use plan because it promotes goal number 1, land use, goal number 2, economy. It directly meets the comprehensive land use plan, chapter 6 action item that states, ensure that the land development code permits residential growth and development that allows residents to age in place within neighborhoods. It directly meets the comprehensive land use plan, chapter 6 action item that states permit and encourage the development of accessory dwellings in single-family neighborhoods and establish design criteria to minimize their impact on adjacent properties and neighborhood character. And it is a reasonable request in the public interest because it allows a needed land use that will provide a mix and choice in housing along with supplemental regulations that minimize neighborhood impacts. And no, I will not repeat that.
So is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. And the ayes have it. Let's see, where's...
Other business.
You got, any other business before that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am, go right ahead.
So, staff wants to talk to this board about the upcoming October planning board meeting. And looking, we have 2 very large and significant projects that we've been working on.
Which one I understand wants to get it accelerated.
No, I don't know about that one, but
I'm
anyway.
hearing they've requested that it be as fast,
Okay.
to go through as quickly as possible.
Well, this might hurt because I'm asking for a delay. So anyway,
Doing it fast.
so what my request is while we were looking, doing the final deadlines and dates and notices and stuff to make sure that we're giving everybody exact due dates, we know when we have to advertise and so forth. We recognize that, and you can even see it on my calendar, is the annual State Planning Association, North Carolina, is in Wilmington, and I'm part of the executive board, so I have to be there.
And when is that?
That is the second week in October. That is packet week for that. That's when we're fine tuning the staff report, making sure that everything's put together in orderly fashion. So looking at the calendar, I would like to request if the board would entertain this, to see if we couldn't push the planning board meeting from the 17th to the 24th, which is Thursday, just a week later. That would ensure that we're back in town and have that full week of the of the 14th through the 18th to ensure that our packets are, the staff reports are appropriately put together, and just help us.
Sounds like a reasonable request to me. Anybody got a problem with that?
And so I wanted to
Bring
check
back
to see if we
consistency,
have.
thank you.
And first I want to see if your availability, and if so, we would need a consensus.
Well, I'm not available on the 17th if I haven't turned into a pumpkin anyway.
And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So So that's my request to this board. We would need you to make a formal motion and stuff so we can officially advertise that the planning board meeting is being moved to the 24th.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to.
Oh, let's look at
And
it.
so, yeah, we want to see who's available
Okay.
and make sure we have a quorum.
I think I should be available, but I found it's better for me to look at my calendar before I say that, if I could find it. Yeah, that's good for me. I'm an idiot.
How about you, Joe?
It's actually better than the 17th.
Yeah, for me too. Pretty good.
As far as I know, yep.
Walter? I'm good. Okay, I'm good. Everybody's good? Everybody's good with it? Chair will entertain a motion to move the meeting to the 24th.
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Great. And
Done.
then the pumpkin comment. So we had advertised, we have 2 terms that are actually expiring, 2 members that have termed out, and their term ends at the end of this month, in fact. And that is our current chair and Patricia Frank. So we have advertised, we've gotten applications and we have them in. But there might be an overlap between the time that we are able to coordinate, because we have to coordinate interviews with the council and then give time for them to reappoint. So there is a possibility that the new appointees may not be in place by the next meeting, and if so, I think it might be even in the bylaws, but typically the seating member will continue until they are replaced officially. So I just wanted to share that. And I know I surprised you today. So
There's somebody else in my house was a little surprised about that too.
Oh, yeah.
That's all right, but that's
I'll
okay.
talk to her.
She'll get over it.
Yeah. All right. So we appreciate the flexibility.
Sure.
and-
But I will, that's good that we're going to do it on the 24th, maybe by then. But don't the people have to be approved by the council, or can they do that at the interviews? I don't know what your process is.
Well, the process is they interview them, and sometimes they can at that meeting go ahead and appoint, but sometimes it's a situation where people can't make the certain
Yeah.
night and there's multiple nights of interviews.
Right, right.
and-
Sometimes it can be several weeks before.
And that's
and
correct.
that's-
It's very hard to coordinate.
saying.
The clerk has a tough job.
Okay, got it. Understand, we're here to serve, as they say.
Okay, well, thank you.
I have one other.
Yes, sir.
I know that some of the other boards have been adopting a code of ethics.
Oh, yes.
Are we going
I
to do that?
apologize. Yes, so we will email those out, and I apologize, it should have been on the agenda under other business. So the city, I want to say it was recently adopted a code of ethics document that advises
interesting.
staff and
County
public
already has
officials, and it was adopted by the city council. And as serving as an appointed member representing the city in the board capacity, we are asking all of our appointed board members and committee members to review it and to sign it as well. So we all have the same standard. So I will email that out, and I apologize, thank you very much for bringing that up. Appreciate that. So
Good.
we'll email that out.
Good. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Skiba, for coming tonight and being here to support us here, sir. Is that it? Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? Done.
I'd be shocked if they sat the new members by October. It usually takes a lot longer
That
than.
is, I believe, the unappropriated.
It's like the guy that says, at Dunkin' Donuts, oh my God, we got donuts, we're gonna sell this money.
Who is going